My name's Hugo Russell. I've got the pleasure of hosting this morning's session. Just before we get going, going to do the usual mandatory sort of thing we're getting used to of like waiting for 90 seconds as those who are stuck in previous meetings, whether it's with cats, kids, or actually a team stand-up. So we'll see how that goes. But just in the moment while we're waiting, I'll give you a quick update on a few things. We are recording the session this morning. That'll be available afterwards. If you would like a copy of the speaker's slides, get in contact either directly with the speaker, that being Paul or Ellen, or via Charlotte. Please ideally copy both in, so that being if you needed to get in contact with Paul or Ellen, then copy Charlotte in just so we can follow up and keep things joined up for you all. Key thing about this is more than just the normal sort of a presentation. We're also doing the Q&A and chat. So down the bottom of your screen, you've got where it's got the Q&A. That is, as it says, for questions, please, into there. And in the chat channel, like Charlotte's just done, can you all just say hello to everyone? So I know that you're all used to actually using the chat, because strangely enough, once everyone starts to get used to it, then the whole thing then works, which is great. Remember on the list that you can actually change to all panelists, all attendees. Fabulous. Well done, everyone. Thanks for putting notes into there. That breaks the ice on that. I'll be asking a couple of questions through this morning. So if you want to ask questions or make a link, comments, just a point. Please avoid any sort of overt self-promotion. Instead, actually share tips and links that really then demonstrates your knowledge, rather than just saying we are amazing and we can do everything to do with cyber or stress, because no one will believe that. Everyone is a specialist in their own area, therefore through links and accurate and strong questions that will actually demonstrate that. Do feel free to contact the speakers afterwards, ideally not whilst they're speaking, because it will distract them. Now, if you wanted to test them out for stress, then feel free, but I'd rather you didn't, because that will just cause chaos in the whole thing. There is no such thing as multitasking. It has been proven by many universities and other standards. It's just a case of how quick you can switch between tasks. The last thing I just wanted to say is thank you very much to Charlotte and Hope for behind the scenes and pulling all this event together, and especially to Ellen and Paul for taking the time, the effort, and your knowledge for putting these together. So a point to everyone here who's listening in, they're doing this not just out of pure philanthropic reasons like with us. It's there for generating business for one and all. From our side of things, the reason we're doing it is because of Cyber Centre. That's the building behind me. Cyber Centre, I should say Cyber Court, is a centre in Herefordshire that specialises in cyber and security. We're there to help build a community, and we're looking to help create business for cyber and those related companies in the region. There we go. I've waffled enough. Anyone who's late, tough. Pleasure to have you all along this morning. I'm going to delight to invite along two excellent, strong speakers. Paul first, then it'll be Ellen. I'll introduce both as they're about to speak. So Paul, thank you very much for joining this morning. Paul spoke really well at the Cyber Fringe Festival we did in November. He's also the director of Calibre Mental Health. He's got a significant number of years in the military, a Distinguished Service Medal. Oops, I got that. No, sorry. Not DSM, sorry, Paul. Meritorious Service Medal. In other words, a person who applies himself. He's been in horrible situations, got through it all. The thing that I really like is that he's one of the few people who has walked to both North and South Poles and done things like Everest Base Camp. He speaks not only from experience, but also from the knowledge as well. So Paul, a delight to have you along this morning, and thank you very much.
No problems. Thanks for the great intro there. It's not about medals, so I'm going to share the screen. And good morning. Yep, I'm a director of this amazing company. I've got to promote it. Sorry, Hugo. I'm a mental fitness coach as well. And I'm going to take you through and focus on stress, okay, for this next short session, and it'll lead to more specifics with Ellen. So I'm going to kind of set the scene for you guys. First of all, I just want to emphasize, really, we've all got mental health. Like we have physical health, we've got our mental health. And that's regardless of our age, our race, our color, our creed, our culture. We've all got it, you know. And like physical health, that we get injured, we could get injured or become sick or ill. That's the same for mental health, exactly the same. Okay, and that's how we need to think about this, where, you know, there's a stigma attached to mental health in itself. I want to use an analogy, first of all. Start off with this elastic band here I've got in front of me. And this is us in this, you know, stressful, we've been bombarded, especially during this current COVID, of all these stresses, and we're getting pulled and pulled, and then hopefully it retracts back. And that retracting back, or that bouncing back, is resilience. Yeah, the ability to bounce back after we're thrown all these curveballs and, you know, delivering these talks and stuff, you know, and other things. Okay, and it's get pulled and pulled and pulled sometimes, pulled to the point sometimes it doesn't retract back properly. And that's probably the stage where we need to go and get some help. You know, and that first port of call, as we're well aware, is the doctor, the GP, the Samaritans or something like that. But there's also a time where we pull and pull. This is very thick, I'm not going to get it to snap, but it snaps. And that kind of reaches crisis point. And that crisis point could be manifest itself through anger, through worry, through tears and snots. In the workplace, could be very angry outburst, or sadly, it could be that person on the edge of a cliff or a bridge, you know, and wanting to end their lives. So, you know, stress, although it isn't a mental illness, it's there, and I'll talk about it. It's an actual emergency response, okay, but can lead to serious mental health conditions, and also your actual physical health as well. So I'm going to set the scene. I'm going to use my military background, which Hugo kindly alluded to bring an analogy in and set the scene. And then we'll have a look at a few things. So some take homes for you guys. This is the key thing. It's not about me. It's about you guys, and have the take homes. I'm going to break it down into layman's terms, really, what stress is, how it affects us, and then I'll hand over to Ellen. So we're going to look at the effects of stress on you. I've got some activities. I was hoping to see you guys, but I can't. But hopefully we'll use the Q&A, and you hopefully will engage and do the activities. And also I've got a kind of a scale where you can look at your own stress level in the past 12 months to where you are now, which should be quite useful for you. And then we're going to have a look at one coping. Well, we'll talk about coping strategies, because the so what is, yeah, okay, I'm stressed, but how do we deal with that? How do we deal with it ourselves? And no doubt we've been through some pretty stressful times as of recently as well. And you're here today. Let's be grateful for us. You know, a beautiful day today. You know, it's not raining. So let's be grateful for that. And, you know, that's a coping strategy. We're here today. So let's move on. Got a little bit to get through. So I said I was going to use a bit of my military adage. Okay, don't worry, I'm not going to get you to wear any helmet or body armor, but this is what I used to wear in the battlefield in high risk environments. I'd have my body armor on, I'd have my helmet, and I'd have my weapon to protect me from any threats. It would help me see, it would look at night and the likes. But I want to talk about that body armor and the helmet, because actually it protected me physically in the battlefield, and it's made, you know, with Kevlar. It's meshed over very tight, very clever material to protect from any bullets hitting me. But in certain areas, I would also have large plates, and those plates would be quite heavy, but for those vital organs. Why am I telling you this? Well, that protects me physically, but what protects us kind of psychologically in the mental health space? Because we've been bombarded every day with all these daily stresses. You know, so physically we can protect ourselves. We have our PPE for the current COVID, you know, the NHS workers at the front line of their full PPE, protecting them physically. But what about psychologically? How are we protecting ourselves psychologically? And that's important, really, really is important. So with that in mind, I'm going to give you an example, an extreme example of myself in the battlefield. I don't normally mention this, but I think it gets an example over. I'm not going to give the specifics as such, but one time when I was in the battlefield, and it was my baptism of fire, and it was a life or death situation. I went over into a wadi. I got split up from my rest of my team, only very temporarily, which rarely happens. And then I was faced with an enemy. And that enemy was about 20 meters away. He was tucked in the rocks and he was shooting at me. And you'd like to think, well, I've been drilled. I've been, I know the skills. I know exactly what to do and how to do it. And it's my job, life or death, being tasked to do this, that I can react and I should be able to react. But you just don't know until you actually faced with that real life threat. I've been using targets and all that, but actually it's come to the real thing now. And this guy is shooting at me. He was in a very awkward position, by the way. Luckily it was. And he was shooting. And what's the first thing I do? I have this big machine gun, as you can see there on the picture, okay? I was carrying this machine gun and I went to go and use it. I brought it up into the shoulder to go and fire, to neutralize that threat as such. And actually, I had a stoppage. And that stoppage really, brought things to the fore. What do you do? That silent pause. And I had that freeze moment. And we all hear about freeze. And I really had that freeze moment. And I would say people talk about for 9 seconds. And that's what actually happened. I for a period of time, I don't know how long, I had this feeling of freeze. And although someone's trying to kill me, quite literally. So what did I do? During that 9 seconds, everything was going off around me, confusion, heart rate pumping, all that, what's normal, those stressors on me, huge stressors. And then all of a sudden it kicked in. That flight kicked in. I got down onto one knee. I lifted up the top cover, cleared the ammunition and put a new belt on. Put the top cover back down, cocked the weapon again, went to go and fire, and it only fired 3 to 5 rounds. Another stoppage, but it kept the guy's head down. It was enough at that time. But I had another stoppage. But because all this stuff is going and protecting my body, quite this emergency system is kicking in, that actually I got down back onto one knee. I cleared it quite coolly, actually, and I put a fresh belt on, and then it was running. Okay, I was back on track, and the fight had the switch in the back of my head, hit this fight button, and it was either life or death situation, and the rest was history. I'm not going to go into the detail, but that was that. I've told you this example because I've mentioned about this emergency response of stress, and that's what it triggers. It's a protection mechanism, quite literally. And where you hear fight, flight, freeze, I actually had freeze, flight, fight. And other people, in different ways. And you could probably all relate. Let's bring it back to the real world now. And in the workplace, you're not going to get shot at, hopefully, maybe with a piece of paper. But or whatever you're doing, we've all been in that situation, I think, where we felt those stresses and what it initiates. And that's quite important to be aware of. So what is stress? Well, I've kind of alluded to it, really. And this is the health and safety executive. It's the adverse reaction to excessive pressure or demands placed of them. And if we go back to the rubber band, and it's being pulled and pulled, it's this excessive pressure, this prolonged pressure, okay, of the adrenaline going, or what should be happening, high pulse, increased breathing, all that. If that's happening over a prolonged period of time, it's not going to be good for you. It's an emergency quick response, and that's what this is about. So I'd like you to arm yourselves with a pen and piece of paper. I can't see you, but if you could do that, that'd be great. And I want you to think about what are the causes of stress for you at the moment, the current causes of stress, because these changes, it's like a continuum. When I did this before COVID, it was other things, but now we're in this, well, we're coming out of it, but it'd be interesting to see what you guys have got, and hopefully you'll be able to use the Q&A. And I want you to think, hopefully you're on with a pen and piece of paper now, think about these. I don't want you to write them down. What I'd like you to do is to draw them. Okay, and I would really like to see them and share them, but and I want you to draw them down starting now. You've got 2 minutes, in fact, no, 1 minute, to draw as many as you can, and be honest with yourself, and have a look and see what you're putting down on a piece of paper. It's going to go a bit quiet now, or might just put a bit of pressure on you. You've got 1 minute. Meantime, I'll have a look what's in there. Yeah, draw them. As many as you can. Okay, 30 seconds to go. Okay, stop what you're doing, put your pens down. I always wanted to say that, by the way. So how did you get on? If you would have put in the Q&A what you actually put down or drew, I normally on these sessions, I can see what you're doing. We can have a laugh and see what you've done. But only you know, okay, those stressors. But the key thing as well is actually, how did this make you feel? What actually happened? And those who hopefully you've done the activity, what did you feel? If you could put just one word in each on the Q&A, that'd be really appreciative, you know, and feeling, did you feel under pressure just to do that? And what was those physical responses? Because there's not only physical responses, there could be confusion, there could be what is going off here, he's going to ask me to mention this, all sorts, and it's normal. Okay, and that's the key thing, it's normal. And I'm going to relate to the shaky man here. So the shaky man, that you might have felt some of these points here, you know, the heart racing, the palpitations, disorientated, lightheaded, mind racing. You know, I've given you that example, but we've probably all been there in some way or another, a bit flustered. And it goes back to that example I gave you on the battlefield. And that's, you know, I didn't look like that, but that's in analogy how the stress levels can manifest themselves and show themselves in a physical and psychological space. So let's have a quick look what we've got anything in there. Yeah. Okay. And I can see some of you have put, I've taken some pictures here. Maybe the current pictures, thinking of COVID, could be a stressor for you. Financial worries. Time is a big pressure. Meeting deadlines, prioritizing time, carving out time, making time, looking after children. I see someone put in there, and that's been a big one, also personally as well. Relationships, and we're coming to the cyber world. You know, the effects of using technology, social media. How do we look on social media? The phone is beside us. Are we tied to the phone? How is it affecting us? These huge stressors which are bombarding us daily, pulling, okay, this elastic band, our elastic bands. Hopefully we track back and we can work through it. So hopefully you've done that activity and you had those feelings, and that was the idea of it, okay, and you're aware of what stresses you at the moment. And I want to use the stress container. You've probably heard of the stress bucket. Well, it's a stress container. And we all carry these stress containers around with different sizes depending on this resilience. And inside the stress buckets, okay, or container, is a stress. And it's in there. And we don't want it to spill over. And as you can see there, it spills over. And that's called snapping, or that crisis point. We don't want it to get to that stage. So it's important that we've got that tap. And that tap is there, and I put head, heart, hand as a coping strategy. We'll talk about that afterwards. But you've got your coping strategies there. That tap cannot be blocked. You've got to use that tap so it drains out all that stress. We hear about exercise, eating healthily, and that's part of that tap. So these coping strategies are key. And we build these stress containers with our resilience from our childhood to where we are now, those setbacks, and we've learned from them, that resilience. those layers of armor I've been talking about. Okay, we're nearly there. I just want you to get something else from this, is to look at your own stress level. Okay, in the past 12 months, how stressed have you been? So I've got this scale, which was devised by 2 psychiatrists back in the 1970s. And they were looking at the Navy and the correlation between life events and stress. And this is what it is here. So I want to take a little bit of time on this and have a look at it. And they've ranked very cleverly. They've ranked, this was back in the 1970s, but I think we can relate to it today, you know, and it's 1 through to 43. But there's life events. And I want you to look at that. And if that life event, you've been affected by that life event, how you perceive it, by the way, then you put those points into your bucket or your container. So you add those points. So what I would like you to do as an activity, really, so you know your own stress levels, and then we'll have a look at it, is to look at each one of those life events. If it affects you, put the points into your container and then add them up. There's a bit of adding up here, by the way, a bit of pressure, okay, arithmetic. Use a calculator or something if you have to, but try and get that score. So I'll leave that up there a couple of minutes. In the meantime, I'll just have a look at the Q&A. Hopefully you're getting there. And yeah, some relevant points there about the £10,000 mortgage. Yeah, that's a little bit outdated. I get that. But there's some relevant points there. I think one in particular, which I really picked up on, is you're changing work hours or conditions. And that's what we've been going through with COVID, in and out of COVID, all these changes to our work conditions. Are we flexible learning now, or flexible working at home? Or are you in the workplace now? You know, so things have adapted and changing, and these are stresses or potential stresses. Other ones there, Christmas, you know, going on holiday, you know, and that's a huge worry, you know, red, green, amber at the moment. So these are huge stresses, or can be, how we place those stresses on us. So hopefully you've got a score. I'm not going to ask for those scores, okay, and I can put this back on at the end as well. If you're interested. Yeah, I like the social media one, is just switch it off. Yeah, that's a good answer. Okay, what does that actually mean? Hopefully you got this score. Right, so you've got your score, your points. Well, 150 or lower, they deem as there's no significant life stress, as in I put it down as green. And then it builds up to 150 to 200, a 30% chance. You're kind of yellow. Then you're amber, 200 to 300 points. It's a 50% chance of developing a stress-related illness. And then you're burning red. It's an 80% chance of developing a stress-related illness. Now, I don't want to worry you. I mean, I've done this with loads of organizations, and people have been 400, 500, I think I've had. So, you know, but it goes back to that stress container. How big is your stress container? And you just need to be aware of the stresses that are being placed on you. And it might be brimming, you know, and it's just ready to spill over. That curveball could be thrown into that container and it could just spill over. So we need to be aware of it. So hopefully this exercise, having a quick look at that, has helped you identify your own stress levels, to help you and maybe others as well. And that's what this is all about. Okay, I'm going to move on. Right, next we're going to just quickly look at coping strategies. And the key thing here is looking after number one. And I know that sounds quite selfish, but it's like the old, you know, in the aircraft, your oxygen mask, as I've put there, is looking after yourself so you can look after others. And that is so important. So how do we cope? And like I said, you've been doing this probably throughout. Okay, but I just want to highlight a few for you guys. And hopefully this quick session has just, you know, realized if stress has become a problem, you could use that stress matrix, that readjustment rating scale, to identify it. But you've got these signs, you know, you come home after hard work with a continuous headache, your heart's racing, all those points are saying, actually, you know, potential signs of stress here, and you should be aware of it. You may have to reorganize your lifestyle as well to adjust to that. You've got to tell your bosses, you know, your line managers is vital. And during my army career, there was two instances. One instance, I just got on with it, which was a bit silly of me at the time, but I didn't want to let the side down. But there was another time shortly after I learned from that actually I've got to put my hand up, and I did, and I got the help and support I needed, which was greatly appreciated. So you've got to do that. And you might just tell your bosses you might need some time out here. You know, the usual stuff there: healthy diet, relax, socialize. Yeah, as we're unlocking as well, socialize. We realize the importance of these things. I really do. Setting yourself goals. I'm not talking about walking to the North and South Poles. You know, just mini goals, just doing little things, part of your routine. But don't get changed to your routine. Routine's important. But, you know, giving yourself goals to get out and about. You know, it could be to run a half marathon, for example. You get a friend and just running towards that goal whenever that event is, as an example. Avoid those unhealthy habits. And I dare say we've seen these unhealthy habits. I definitely have. I love those Tyrrell's cider vinegar crisps. They're great. And I need to try and avoid them. And those Netflix binges, there's nothing wrong with them. Okay, but just be aware of them. Okay. And then lastly, you know, putting things into perspective. You know, actually, like I said, we're here today. It's a beautiful day. We're all together. And just being grateful and gratefulness is so important, so powerful as a coping strategy. I've got a good friend of mine who suffers with bipolar, actually, and he uses gratefulness in the morning. He lives in his home, but he uses what he's got around him to be grateful for how he is for that day. And the NHS have got 5 steps to mental health well-being. I just wanted to go through them very quickly, and that's connecting, socializing, I've mentioned, being active, yeah, exercising, learning, as you guys are today. Hopefully you've got some golden nuggets from this. And learning is so important for those neural pathways. And also when we get older, you know, when we can't get out and about so much, you know, doing those crosswords, those jigsaws, Sudoku, you know, to reinforce and keep those neural pathways healthy. Giving to others, volunteering, very important. And the rewards that do that, giving time, not just money, but time maybe, is vital. And then the mindfulness piece, and just being present and look at, there's some great apps out there, by the way, you know, Headspace being one on the apps to bring yourself to the present moment and being grateful. Lastly, this is the last thing I really want to put towards you guys, is the head, heart, hand. I think this is so important. You're probably not aware of it, or you are aware of it, you're doing it. And this activity really, think of an activity, interest, or hobby that you enjoy doing, that you do, and this is your tap, but why are you doing it? Do you know why you do it, or you just do it automatically? I like fitness, you know, and I do it automatically because I know it hits the head, hand, heart for me. But actually writing it down, describing it, it's pretty difficult. So if you can have a look at that, maybe take a screenshot. It's being recorded anyway. You can come back to this, but think, you know, what stimulates your mind? What gives you a sense of pride and achievement, and a feeling of well-being and sense of purpose and belonging? And if you just write those bits down, that would be great for you, so you know the importance. You know, I like I said, I enjoy fitness, so this physical activity. But what about if I become incapacitated? I become ill. I become sick. You know, it's going to affect my mental health. I need something else. I need something theoretical to do otherwise. So we need to think about maybe 2 things: something indoors and something outdoors, or something and I've heard some great activities when I've delivered some of this training. Okay, I think I'm going to move on. Hopefully you've got something from that. I haven't had a chance to look at the chat box under pressure, but I'm going to hand over to Ellen very shortly to bring in the specifics of cyber. And I think I've set the scene hopefully for Ellen, but that's my details there. We'll take questions, Q&A at the end, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. Excellent on that. Just before we charge on everyone, there's a couple, like Paul said, we'll pick up the points in the Q&A with Ellen and Paul at the end. Do take a note of his contact details there. If you're needing to get in contact with Paul, I'll just put it in there. There's his details to his website. And thank you very much again. I'll catch up with you at the end of it. Ellen, thank you very much for joining us this morning. It's a delight to have you along. For everyone, just a quick introduction on Ellen's background. She's got over 25 years of experience in the commercial world and consulting to large organizations ranging from the likes of Rolls-Royce in the aerospace area through to WorldPay. So she's exceptionally experienced in regards to dealing with the change needed in large corporates. She, like Paul, has had experiences that most would never have encountered, and I don't wish that on other people, but it means that she can both speak from personal experience, but also from the knowledge educational side. Ellen's got, is a visiting lecturer, both at Wolverhampton and another university, and is one of the is part of a global network of consultants. So, and the reason she's here today is she's been actually working with us at CyberQuarter and then helping a selected number of companies on putting some change in place. Thank you for joining us this morning, Ellen, and over to you.
I'm just checking, can you hear me?
Yep, absolutely fine. See your slides. So as soon as you hit,
great, thanks.
Yeah, presenting perfectly.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. Thanks for the intro, Hugo. It makes me sound really special. Thanks, Paul, as well, for what you've just done. It's very real, what you've just done, and I really appreciate it setting the scene. So just as Paul has said, I'm going to relate the talk to CyberQuarter and the stresses around cyber. So I'm going to go backwards to go forwards. So I'm going to look at now stress. How secure are we? And what is the cost of stress? And that will become relevant as I just go through the slides. So what are the costs of cybersecurity breaches to companies? We're here because we're talking about stress in the workplace, and you are a business and you're managing your business. And what happens if an attack happens? So we're looking at some classic examples here in 2016 with Uber. They lost 57 million users' details, and it cost them $148 million to rectify the situation. We're talking reputational damage as well as IT infrastructure. You got Yahoo in 2016 with 3 billion users' details taken. Equifax in 2017 with 147 million users' details. In fact, on their website, it says they offer financial security to their clients. It cost them $4 billion to rectify the situation. In 2018, the Marriott Hotel had something called a persistent intruder, and that was someone who tried to attack them over 5 years, took 150 million users' details by stealth, and it cost them $350 million to rectify. And in 2018, Under Armour, which we're all familiar with the fitness organization, took 150 million users' details, and they lost 3.8% share value. So the costs of a breach on a company are huge. So how many attacks are there? Well, there are stats that tell us in the Security Magazine and Cybint there is an attack every 39 seconds on a small business. And 95% of breaches are down to human error. So for an SME, we've noted in Bullguard and Verizon, they say that 43% of SMEs say that they have no cyber defense plan, which is why CyberQuarter exists. 60% say it won't happen to me. 74% it's outsider influences that try and attack your business. And 22% say that there is no remote worker cyber defense plan. And we all know what that looks like in the last year. So how many cyber professionals are there in the UK looking after our major organisations? Well, there are only 289,000. Now that looks like a big figure, but what are they feeling? Most days, and I'm going to give you some more stats as we go through the talk, they're highly stressed. So the agenda for today, I'm going to go through what the problem is to human and organizational stress, what that looks like. Now, Paul has beautifully explained that to you, so I'm not going to labor on that point. And then I'm going to look at what CyberCourt are offering and the human factors solution that we're bringing to the table. So what is stress? Now, if you look on Google, it says there are over 1 billion search results for the word stress on Google. The description for that is, let me just minimize you guys on the side of the screen. Stress is usually a reaction to mental or emotional pressure. Now, Paul touched on this a little bit earlier. It's touched on emotional pressure. It's when you're feeling anxious or your body releases stress hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol. That's what stress means to the NHS. Behavioral scientists, what do they say? Well, I think one of the questions in the chat earlier was, isn't stress useful sometimes? Well, Paul and I have an agreement to disagree on this one, but we do know that short-term stress is how we designed billions of years ago when the man was first and woman were first on the planet. Short-term stress is we are innately designed to respond to an emergency situation, and Paul's explained to you what that looks like. Now, short-term stress, when you're looking for peak performance, is essential because your body will react beautifully to getting across the race line first. I've worked with racing drivers and they have blockers as to why they're not getting across the line first. So short-term stress can be harnessed and you can reach peak performance. However, if you hold on to stress, you will hit exhaustion, breakdown and illness will occur. And Paul has explained that a little bit earlier. So short-term stress, Paul mentioned flight, fight and freeze. And what does that look like? Well, a classic example of that is back in nature where one animal wants to chase the other because one's hungry and one wants to save its life. Now, short-term stress is great because in that scenario, it lasts maybe 10, 15 minutes while they've got the energy to move. Either they will fight for it or they'll flee from it, but it stops and they let it go and they go back to grazing. But humans are not that intelligent and we hold on to it. So we hold on to stress for a very long period of time. And what does that breed? It breeds dis-ease in the body. It literally creates sickness, behavioral issues, emotional reactions, and performance issues on every level. What do neuroscientists say about stress? Well, this is an interesting one because this is my background. So neuroscience is the study of the mind and the nervous system. Now, what does that look like? You can see on the image on the right hand side, the mind sits inside the brain up here and the nervous system reaches every extremity of the body, which is beautifully designed in fight or flight. We react accordingly. However, our body and our mind doesn't know the difference between perception or perceived stress and the reality. And what you become is your own insider threat. You quite simply shut down. So if you look at this, the nervous system itself is a little bit like, you'll see the two cars on the screen. When we're in repair mode, which is at sleep at night, we're a little bit like the car on the left-hand side. We're driving and we're cruising through the sunshine and we're in that beautiful space where we've got lost in time and we're enjoying the moment. That is a repair situation as far as the nervous system is concerned. And I'll come on to that in a second. However, sometimes you want to put your foot down. You need to take that corner. You need to get across the line first, which is what my racing drivers do. And that's another aspect of the nervous system. But you need both. You cannot race around the racetrack unless you pop in the pit lane occasionally and restore that car, restore the tires, restore the mechanics. You have to stop. So your nervous system is what we call your command center. It is your autonomic nervous system. And it's called that for a reason because it's automatic. And it's broken down into two areas. There is the sympathetic nervous system, which is the active part of the nervous system. That's when you put your foot on the pedal and you take the car around the track. And there's the parasympathetic nervous system, which is where you sit back and relax and repair. It's when you go to sleep at night. It's when you take that moment in the office to take time out, which most people don't do. So what is stress? Stress is a neurological, biological, chemical, and environmental response. We are innately designed to deal with it. However, we don't let it go. Putting it into a work scenario, if any of you had that little symbol that comes up on your phone that tells you you've got a few hundred emails. I've never had that many until I did one where I marked all my emails on Gmail as unread, and all of a sudden, whoosh, it filled up my inbox. Now that manifests itself in, oh, I've just got way too much to do. You'll have an argument with someone at work, or you used to, physically. You'll hold that stressor physically, and that will demonstrate itself at work in many, many different guises. And when you show up at work, you're not always showing you the real you. And what that looks like is that you can really be bringing a lot of stress personally to the workforce, but you're trying not to show it. Well, I can guarantee it will manifest itself. So here, if we look at stress in the cyber world, if you look at the top hits when you put in stress in cybersecurity professionals, there are over 13 million hits for that. And you'll see there are 9 reasons why cybersecurity stress is an industry epidemic. CREST report, I'll talk about that shortly. Top 10 reasons why cybersecurity professionals are in burnout right now. And there are 65% of stressed out cybersecurity and IT workers. The top hits are all about stress and burnout for cybersecurity professionals. So the health and safety executive, what do they say about stress? Well, there are 11 million working days lost due to stress, and over 70% of UK adults feel overwhelmed or unable to cope. This is the general workforce. What do you do as an organization? You have to mitigate the risk of stress in an organization to get insurance cover. You have to identify what is the cost of a cyber breach and the stress that is caused by that. What is that going to cost your business? And like I just mentioned, the health and safety executive, you have as an organization, a duty of care to assess risk in your organization. But most importantly, you have to demonstrate to the health and safety executive that you're acting upon it. What's the cost? Well, in CySec, it says that 40% of your cyber professional team, and if you haven't got a team in your organization, I'm talking about the major organizations that have a team, but just look at the people that are dealing with cyber in your business. If you haven't got one, think carefully why you haven't. 40% of them are going to leave you before the end of the year. And what is the cost of that? Well, you have to recruit, you have to onboard, you're going to lose productivity time, and there is attrition. Now, I was told reliably about 2 or 3 months ago that the cost of that is between £80,000 to £100,000 to a business. Now, we talked a little bit earlier about stress and cybersecurity professionals. Now, there was a report that was released last year, and I'm waiting for the updated one of that, for CISO stress, which is your Cyber Information Security Officer. And that's 48% of them are suffering from mental health issues. And that's an accurate survey done over 400 cyber professionals in the UK and the US. Now, Paul has just talked to you about mental health and the importance of looking after your mental health. In that report, it said that 95% of them are working beyond their contracted hours. I've just highlighted the 48% of them are suffering from mental health. And in fact, 23% of them are turning into medication or alcohol to cope. They can't do their jobs, and it's affecting them physically. In the CREST report, it's a stress and burnout report, specifically titled, it says 1 in 3 of your cybersecurity team are experiencing tremendous stress. And 1 in 4, it says that it's affecting the board level's ability to do their job. Our survey at the university, in the program that I was on last year, showed us that for the cyber professionals who answered our survey, over 90% of them, it was affecting them physically. Now, we've talked about this a little bit earlier, how stress affects you as the individual and your performance. It's affecting work-life balance, over 86% of them, which is higher than the national average highlighted by the health and safety executive. So how can we help? Well, Cyber Quarter is here, and we're offering a human factors solution. We're offering a training solution. We're using a licensed training program. It looks at a 1-day workshop. It involves the understanding neuroscience of stress and change in a business, the leadership, and also how to go through change. And we are all going through change since the pandemic. We're offering coaching, so we're looking at how you communicate better with yourselves and those around you, how you affect your own performance of those around you. We use something called the GROW model for that. We have a journal that you can document everything in, and we work with you for 3 months. Hopefully you end up looking one or the other. And we're looking at some research, and we're looking at capturing data via a project called CyberMind, which I led on last year. And that will look at, and that's going to help cyber professionals to detect, predict, and manage stress. And by taking those measurements, we're helping you to manage your own stressors. So what's our background? Well, I've worked with the Cyber Research Institute at the university and the cyber psychology team. And it's where I was working with Professor Prashant Pillai, who's a director of Cyber Quarter. My background is I met Prashant at the last Defence Expo, where I was demonstrating the usability of mobile EEG equipment, which is where you measure brainwaves. And I did that on stage with One Ultra, previously known as Ultra Electronics, and I'm a special project partner with them. Again, Prashant was there talking on stage there too. Soldier magazine featured the demonstration of future of our forces is based on thought control equipment, and I was using thought control equipment on stage to control and turn an object left, right, and push it away and bring it forward again. We see the future of our forces of looking after not only the technology but the human behind the technology. I've mentored on a BT program in Malvern, which is fairly local to Hereford, and I've done some recordings at BT Studios. So you can contact me at the email here. You can contact me at CyberQuarter, and I want to thank you for listening. I've given you a lot of stats and I've given you a lot of information. I'm not here to overload you because Paul has done such a beautiful job of explaining to you what stress looks like in the body and how it affects you. But what we're offering at CyberQuarter is to bring that human side of cyber security as well as the cyber security solutions. So I'm going to hand back to Hugo unexpectedly early, but I also like when I'm working with people to give them the gift of time. So we've got a little bit of extra time in the diary. I can see there are 12 new messages in the chat. I haven't looked at what they are yet. So I'm going to just quickly scroll through those and I'm going to let Hugo take over.
Thank you very much, Ellen. Good one. Couple of questions, and then we'll go through them and I'll pick these up we'll start from the bottom upwards on this list. So, Mark, hello, mate. Good to have you on the call. Paul, how much truth is there in some stress is good for you?
I think Ellen, I didn't answer the question, but Ellen's answered that quite well. There is, when we say good stress, bad stress, there's a reason, there's that autonomic, there's a reason, it's a protection mechanism. It helps us to perform, but very short, in a brief spell. And I think Ellen brought that really nicely. So I think that's been explained quite well. But over a prolonged period of time, like I said, it's not good. Okay, those pressures, it's not good. Unless Ellen's got anything more on that.
No, I agree with you, Paul. Short-term stress does give us that drive for performance. We've all been there where that emergency kicks in. You gave an excellent example of when you're in the field dealing with stress and what that reaction time. We all deal with it. We all have stress. We know what that looks like and feels like. You also gave the example of, financial pressure, spouse pressure, working from home pressure, social media pressure, bill pressure, and all of that pressure is a stress and it's a trigger to the body's response to it, and how we handle that response is down to us. Stress is not going to stop. How we handle it can change.
Nice one. Yeah, that thing on how to handle it, is that Alistair, I don't know if you wanted to elaborate in your questions, but his question of isn't some managed stress helpful for performance? And I'm going to take a guess at that. It's somewhere between prolonged and short term. And how do you manage that? So in regards to how do you manage it, Paul?
I just think stress has got a very bad wording. Okay, I don't think we use stress. I think we use pressure. So pressure, yes, using the right, and we've all been put through different pressures, but providing it's progressive, it's controlled, right for the environment, and it prepares you for that eventual what you want to achieve. I think that's good. Pressure is good, providing it's controlled. When it turns to stress, then you turn into the emergency piece. You know what I mean? And you got to be careful. Very careful how we use that. We've alluded to that already. So I think we change the word stress to pressure. Okay, although we have stressors, but I think stress has got bad press. We don't use stress. That's my view anyway. Ellen.
Hugo, could you just repeat the question for me?
Yeah, it's from Alistair, and that is, isn't some managed stress helpful for performance? And we were looking at whether it's short. I mean, that also then infers how prolonged, how consistent that is. And then Paul was putting across that it's not necessarily stress, but it's more on the lines of pressure.
Yeah, sorry, but I thought you mentioned that stress was good for a management tool. No, it's not. So how we manage stress. Thank you very much for clarifying that one. How we manage it is part of what we're offering at CyberQuarter. So there are interventions you can offer. Paul has already suggested some, and coping mechanisms that the NHS offer, and how you handle that, how Paul responds to that with hand, head, heart. We've just gone through the training at Cybercourt with everyone who works there, and I think all of you guys can see there are certain techniques that you can use to help you to slow down and stop. You can change, and so there are 4 tools and 2 models of change that we go through, but there are some coping mechanisms. However, you've really got to want this. You are going to be stuck because you are going to get into a habit of holding on to stress. Stress automatically releases cortisol and adrenaline into the body. You get addicted to the adrenaline rush, and so therefore you are stuck in the habit of thinking and feeling and thinking of that is what you want. It is who you are, it is who you become, and it has created your personal reality, but your personality doesn't necessarily reflect that. You're stuck. And if you want to get unstuck and you want to move forward, you have to stop. And the way we do this, and Paul alluded to this before, there are neural connections in the brain, and we literally fire and wire every day. We have, and you know this from the training, 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and 90% of them are the same as yesterday. But neuroscience shows us that 70% of those are negative. So we're firing and wiring negative thoughts all day long, and we're stuck in a rut. But you have a window of opportunity to stop it, and you have to unwire and rewire, and you do it consistently. It's like learning to drive a car. It won't happen again. But you've got to really want this.
And I'm assuming it's essential or most helpful if you have a consultant, mentor, colleague, because making changes for the good on your own, I've found exceptionally difficult to do.
Yeah. There are some multiple digital tools, and Paul was brilliant at saying, there are so many out there. Even the CREST report suggests Headspace as a coping mechanism to stress and burnout. It is a mechanism if you are willing and ready to use a digital platform, but most of the time we are used to dealing with people, which is our most beautiful level of communication. So the level of communication we have with ourselves and our own internal dialogue is the most powerful, and the in a positive and a negative. And next best thing is having a mentor or a coach to work with. And I'm sure Paul's had this in when you're on touring, you're in a team, you've got that absolute trust well, if you can get it in a co-working space, that's brilliant. But certainly in the military, they have absolute trust in each other. And he's also talked about physical training as well as mental training, and it's important to have someone with you. Paul, sorry, I think you want to say something.
Yeah, I think it's the key thing is there's no black art to this. It simply is, you've got to vent sometimes, you know what I mean? You can vent to yourself, do it internally, but the key thing, what I deliver with my company is having that difficult conversation, is sitting down, having a cup of tea and talking about it, and I think you can't beat that, it's having that difficult conversation, talking about it and venting off. I think that's so important, and that's what we deliver with our training.
So I think it's a very good question to be asked about, is stress a good way? Can we manage stress in short term? Is it good for us short term, long term? Short term, yes. Long term, no. And there are some ways of dealing with that.
Fabulous, thanks for that. Another one from Alistair. Are IT cyber professionals trained too much on the tech rather than also being trained to manage the situation? So trying to fix the problem rather than manage an incident. A bit of a plug from our side of things has been, and it's from the NCSC, the Cyber Resilience Centres, whoever out there, if you need a cyber incident response plan and you want some funded, you can turn the word over for free support on making that happen. Follow up with Charlotte. We've got a capacity for about another 8 to 12 companies to help on doing that. But whatever the case, you need a cyber incident response plan. Alistair's laid it out there. If you know how to, like you're saying there, manage that situation, then what then happens is you then start putting things in place to actually prevent it happening. So then you end up fixing that problem. I'm also, that's from my side of things, what we're seeing is from one company who are in the area, it took a month to recover from an incident. After we'd shown them how to then do that, we had this lovely feedback saying they'd been hit on a Saturday and they'd recovered by Sunday, and the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office, was wanting to use them as an exemplar and asked them how they'd done it. And it's this thing, and you see this with Ellen and with Paul. If you learn how to respond to a situation, how to respond to those stresses rather than reacting, then you actually can start putting some really, it takes that long-term stress away. You know how you're going to be able to respond. That's certainly the take from our side. So get in contact from Charlotte. That's an unablated plug from my side of things to go and chase Charlotte up on that. But Paul, what are you seeing with helping people trying to fix the problem rather than manage an incident?
I think it's key. I mean, we know that prevention is cure. It really is the upstream piece. If you can promote a positive mental health culture, that is vital to any organization, and the benefits that you reap, the rewards from that. But in a cyber world, I mean, I'm not in the cyber world. I'm going to hand that over to Ellen, but that's from my side, is promoting that positive mental health culture. So Ellen?
Yeah. Paul, what you do is invaluable. When someone hasn't proactively dealt with how to handle a disaster, both from an IT respective situation. Alistair, a good question. IT professionals, yeah, they're not even trained in cybersecurity. It's cybersecurity specialists need to come in and help the IT team. People generally assume IT team know what they're doing, and it's not fair. And they are adding pressure on to their individuals. And when it's not taken care of, you end up with mental health problems. You can see from the stats I've got from the Nominate report, 48% of cybersecurity professionals are suffering from mental health issues. That's their own initial response to a situation. And our survey showed over 90% of them are suffering physically. This is just cybersecurity. You're right, Alistair, this is a human problem. And the Health and Safety Executive have shown us how many days per year are lost due to stress. This is for general workforce. So IT, yes, should learn how to deal with stress better. They also should be supported with a cybersecurity professional. And then as part of that organization's planning, they need to be cyber aware. And yeah, cyber court is brilliant at all of that.
Can I just mention one thing, so I have seen, I've had some people who've spoken at some of my courses and stuff, and I'm being affected by the effects of cyber. The social media, is 24/7, and youngsters in particular, 24/7 bombardment of bullying and harassment, and the effects on their mental health has been catastrophic, to be honest. So, it's there, and I would really like to bring in something, some mental health in the cyber world, for dealing with social media. I think that's so important, because it's just 24/7 bombardment.
And we know as a business tool how powerful social media is in business. It's not great for personal use, and it's been abused. And how do they do that? How do the hackers do it? They use the emotional side of your response to get you to respond to a phishing email or to a scam. And so they're using your emotions to respond. And when you're highly in a high emotional state, whether it be good or bad, you will respond badly. I had an incident a few years ago where I was going through a stressful time with someone that I can't even go to the details, but I called the police and really wondered. This was I'd had an email set up in my name, and people were being contacted. So it was behind the scenes attack based on a criminal act that was in court. It was just a horrendous time. Called the police officer in because I wasn't getting any support from Action Forward at the time, although it did come. And he said most of his time, 50% of his time, he was being called out for Facebook bullying. So and that has a catastrophic effect on mental health. So we are talking about cyber having an effect on both organizations and people, and we need to be aware of both.
Thank you very much on that. Mark, good question here. And so to yourself, Ellen, that touches with yourself as well. Paul, how much does the media at large and add to and fuel negative thought processes? I think it also ties in with his thing about like pop-ups, email dings and texts, but start with the media at large.
Shall I go first?
So, if you would, thanks, Ellen.
Oh, sorry, I know, Cyril. So my background, Hugo mentioned a little bit earlier, is corporate communications. So gosh, there are external communications and internal communications in any organization, and you have to harness both. So when it comes to, we're talking about social media here, Hugo.
Yes. So he's saying like the media at large.
Oh, sorry, media at large. Yeah.
Yeah, and then another point from Mark earlier on was about incoming calls, annoying pop-ups, dinging emails, and texts. And you've sort of like got two things hitting you.
Yeah, you have. And from the background, when I was working with WorldPay, for example, they did a merger between WorldPay UK and e-commerce. They merged what was ex-RBS staff into new talent acquisition. And we had a lot of resistance. And so what we did in the comms team was to generate success stories from the organization, because people were so overwhelmed with the stress they were going through of the enforced change of the organization. They lost perspective and they lost the vision of the organization. They couldn't understand where the organization was going. So and so we started to share success stories through the organization. We identified the people, we identified their names, we called them out, and we shared their success. Shift in perception in the organization was huge. And you shift in energy, shift in emotional response, shift in engagement, huge. But it all came from one small trick. We did it at Rolls-Royce Aerospace as well, when we were embedding a high performance culture. How do you embed something you can't yet measure, and yet the directors knew it worked? So we started using behavioral change for people to get curious about what was going on with the directors. And then they went to the workshops. Once they learned, they were more engaged in the process. So it is really very much, and Paul shared this and I've shared it, about how you show up at work is going to demonstrate who you are, but you're going to try and fake it. But trust me, it won't work. So the negativity that the media generates around problems is something we seek out as individuals, because like I said, 70% of those, 90% of those repeated thoughts are negative. So we're seeking out the negative in the media. So what does the media do? Generate the negative. And so we're in this perpetual cycle of stress wrapped around negative information. You have the ability to step outside of that. And if you start to shift the communication, we did it at WellPay, we did it at Rolls-Royce, and it shifts the response. You can do it with yourself, and you can do it with your own organization, you can do it with your co-workers, but it takes you to be the change that you want to see.
What sort of good news do you share? Yeah, what sort of positive stories? Is there a type or?
Yeah, so as an example with WorldPay, we were having to shift perceptions about ex-RBS staff and new talent acquisition coming in. There was a different appetite for growth in the business, and what was that all about? So we shared the successes were, someone had just succeeded. This is personal successes as well as business. So they succeeded on a 5K run. They'd succeeded on raising some money for a nominated charity. They'd succeeded from moving offices, and they'd generated a new team. They'd succeeded with new sales. They'd succeeded with more acquisition of business. They'd succeeded with share options. It doesn't matter what it is. There is always something you can, trust me, spin doctors exist for a reason in politics. Spin doctors can work in an organization, and spin doctors can work in your own head. And we often listen to the little voice on our shoulder that says, you can't, you're no good, you're not good enough, you're not worthy. And so the little voice on your shoulder that says, come on, you can do this. Now, Paul alluded to the fact that he uses physical exercise to shift his behavior, and people can do that. And I think we've seen that during the pandemic. People have been out running, people have been out walking, people have been out and exercising more, because you have to get out of that environment. You have to shift your thinking.
Just mention about the negative media. We've been bombarded all the time with the negative kind of connotation, social media and stuff, and one recommendation, particularly during the pandemic, the death rates and stuff, and we were delivering resilience training, is try and avoid as best as possible. It's obviously very biased, a lot of it, what we're seeing, and so the key thing is watch twice a day to get the information you require, for your own safety. But I think the key thing is not to be tied to our phones, to social media. Is just switch. If you don't want it, just switch it off. Avoid it. I know it's easier said than done, but turn it off. Avoid the negativity of it, and have a digital detox if you can.
Very good point, Paul, because if you remember, and we've seen this before, fake news exists. And so we get stuck listening to social media instead of trusted sources of information. You'll notice Paul used trusted sources of information on his stats, and so did I. Trust the source. I'm not going to walk down the street. I'm not going to let someone take a photograph of me and put it on their Facebook page because they've just met me in the street. Who are you? Why are you taking the photograph? and who are you communicating that to? I am not going to just what was it this morning? There was something on the radio this morning about teeth whitening. And there are a lot of people offering teeth whitening solutions on social media channels, i.e. Instagram, and we've all seen them. But the recommended dosage of sulfuric, or whatever the acid is that goes in there, is some of them 100 times greater than it should be in a clinical situation. So trust the source of the information. You know, Paul's right, switch the phone off, put a pause on notifications. Our mobile phones exist for a reason with airplane mode. Use it. Put that oxygen mask on you first, switch airplane mode on, and have time to get the task done in front of you. Google do training with their employees on focus. They focus training. They switch off devices so they can focus on a task, or they can do that wonderful thing of meditation and mindfulness to get them to be more creative thinkers. And there is a way that you engage the brain to do that, and it shuts off. It's called a divergent thinking, and it works beautifully for the military, and it works beautifully. And I've got examples of where it can support those that have either acquired PTSD or are trying to deal with PTSD post an event. So you have to shift your thinking. You have to go from convergent to divergent. And how you do that is you engage a different brainwave. I can show you how to do that. And actually at the expo, Paul, at the events expo, one of the attendees did say, well, there's no point me getting all spaced out, you know, and changing my brainwave state when I've got a bullet firing across my shoulder. It's a great Q&A, because I said, no, I agree with you. I wouldn't go into a daydreaming state in an emergency situation. But what I would do is I'd use that state to embed my response times and improve them.
Nice
So you
one.
can do that. You can do that in work. Yeah, you can. Stress is going to happen every day. How you handle it is up to you.
I like it. Thank you for that. I'm a big fan of how you respond rather than how you react after decades of overreacting, whether it's through military training or other things. Yeah.
Remember, beware of the fake news and the cyber hackers. We're all getting it on your text, phone calls, emails, the lot.
Yeah. And if in doubt, go and widen your news feed circle. Go to and read something that you would normally question, and then go in another direction. There is usually 5 points of view to an issue, not 2. So there's a tip for you. I've been chucking a few of them out there, but it's one that got me by surprise, that there are 5 points to it. And they're all parable about blind people with their hands on an elephant on different parts, and they are all arguing about actually what it is they've got their hands on.
Very good point, Hugo.
Though we're all coming at it from a different angle. Listen, that has been tremendous. Thank you so much to the pair of you on that. Everyone, please feel free to follow up with either Ellen, Paul, Charlotte, in regards to any of the points today. CyberCourt is there to help. They're helping companies, whether it's startups and small companies through to the medium and larger ones, everything from giving it space to accelerate a company, or if you're in a large organization, a place that you can actually safely test out your technologies. And finally, Charlotte and Hope, thank you very much for organizing and planning today. And everyone, feel free to just drop Paul and Ellen a note of thanks and any other comments. Otherwise, keep safe, and